get going. Good morning. I've just hit record on this in conversation, so it will be available as a recording later on if you need to step away for any reason. As I said, my name's Linda. I'm from the Tourism Industry Council, which is obviously you knew you were joining a Tourism Industry Council event, but just in case you haven't met me before, I work in the programs, communications and strategic projects area. Part of my role is in the business capability space, which is why I'm really excited to welcome you all here this morning, and also to welcome Charlie, who I'll introduce shortly. I'd just like to begin by acknowledging that I'm coming to you from Ghana country, and I'd like to pay my respect to elders past and present, and to acknowledge the diversity of Aboriginal peoples from across South Australia and their ongoing connection to the country and waters of this beautiful state. And I extend that respect to the elders of the lands where you are all joining us from today as well. I'd also like to acknowledge that we aim to make all of our events an inclusive environment, and we'd like to acknowledge the people in our community who've advocated for everyone's right to belong and bring attention to the ways that we can do this. Accessibility and inclusion are important. Our In Conversation series are short webinars that are part of our business development program, and you will see how that the two work together later on as part of this series, as part of today's conversation, I should say. And we hold them to provide tourism operators with insights and advice that can help you in your business planning and operations. They're really very much, as the title says, an in conversation. I'll be asking questions. Charlie will be answering them. You can also ask questions if you'd like. I'll get you to put those into the chat, and then we'll come to those at the end. And we'll also, at the end, you can also sort of ask them verbally as well. So just a few housekeeping rules: to keep your microphone on mute. And as I said, this session is being recorded, and will be sent, a link will be sent to you at the end of today, and you'll be able to watch back for hopefully some really exciting insights, or just in case you do have to come away and come back to it, or to share with people inside your organisation. So let's get into it. I'm really excited to introduce Charles Doughty, founder and director from Welcome with Pride. Some of you might know Charlie. He's on Instagram. Very a great following, lots of great content too, to make us all really jealous about just being a traveller generally in Australia, but obviously with Charlie presents a really unique educational aspect to his travel tales as well, which we're here to talk about. And so Charlie is going to share some of those valuable insights that he has into the LGBTQI plus travel market, and why and how you can create an inclusive and welcoming environment in your business. We're really excited to be collaborating with Charlie over the next few months to deliver an online workshop first in November, which is focused on LGBTQI plus inclusive tourism. And then in February, we're bringing Charlie to Adelaide to do a face-to-face workshop on mastering inclusive LGBTQI plus tourism. And we're one of the first states in Australia in terms of the tourism industry councils to be doing this, and really excited about the opportunity, and really thrilled to welcome Charlie here today to talk to you all and to give you a little bit of an understanding of the market, and hopefully whet your appetite to come along to our training from November. So Charlie, to start with, can you please introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you for the lovely introduction. So my name is Charlie. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the founder of Welcome with Pride. And so what we do is we help tourism operators attract LGBTQ plus bookings through creating consistently inclusive and welcoming guest experiences. And the reason this is such an attractive market for you to go after is because up to 29% of tourism revenue comes from LGBTQ plus visitors. because we spend between 3 and 7 times more than other travelers. So we're a very attractive segment. However, our research has showed that 60% of LGBTQ plus travelers default to going back into the closet on holiday in Australia. And so what we do is we help tourism operators create a really inclusive guest experience through our training materials. Some of those Linda has mentioned, as well as our e-learning. And then what we also do is we have an accreditation program, and that helps you know exactly what you can do to create an inclusive experience in a very time efficient manner, because we know that you're very busy. So it's very much a checklist with templates and tools to get you on that journey very quickly, whilst managing your time, and also gives you the recognition that you also want to stand out in a competitive market to attract LGBTQ plus guests. So that's a very high level summary. I also have my own personal experience of traveling Australia with my my ex-husband for 2 years, and so I had the most amazing time, but also have a lot of experiences that I can share from that, and that's ultimately why I'm here today and why I created Welcome with Pride. And then also have a community of 130,000 LGBTQ plus travelers on Instagram who have shared their experiences with us over the last 3 years. And lastly, our survey. So we surveyed 1,000 LGBTQ plus travelers in Australia. So we have the most modern, up-to-date view of what LGBTQ plus travelers, what they want, what their experiences are like today, and what you can do to create inclusive experiences and authentically market to them as well. So that's a high-level summary of what we
Excellent,
do.
brilliant. And we'll start to sort of, I guess, peel back some of that stuff as we talk. So, and to begin with, you just sort of, right off the top there mentioned the, the value that LGBTQI plus travelers represent in terms of 29% of tourism revenue. And can you just expand just a little bit more on this in terms of the value that this represents for tourism operators?
Yeah, perfect. So up to 29% tourism revenue, because we spend 3 to 7 times more. The reason that we spend more is because we're more likely to have dual income households, less likely to have kids, although this is also changing. We travel, we're more likely to travel in the first place. So more LGBTQ plus people have passports and are travel ready. We travel more frequently, and we travel for longer, and we spend more when we do. So these are all the reasons that contribute to us being a very valuable segment. I'd also say that we are a growing segment. So 18 to 24-year-olds are 2 times more likely to identify as LGBTQ plus, and that's even larger for younger than 18-year-olds. So we're a growing segment, and we're also a very loyal segment as well. So when we find really inclusive, welcoming experiences that are kind of the opposite of some of the experiences we'll talk about, they really, really stand out, and we become very loyal advocates for those experiences and those brands. We come back again and again, and we also talk to the rest of the community. So we're large, growing, and very loyal.
Right, perfect. Sort of a real opportunity for businesses, and as well as too just a big part of our society and community. So great. It's great to be able to start having these conversations so that people can understand that it's a real opportunity, but also to how people can capture that market and make sure that we're all being welcoming and creating really safe and full environments for people. So just on that, what motivated you to establish, you talked about you sort of did some traveling to establish Welcome with Pride, and how have those personal travel experiences influenced the decision to then go on and create this company and this training?
Yeah, perfect. So I will just briefly add that obviously it's a very big financial opportunity, and we know that matters to operators, which is why we mention it. But obviously, it's the right thing to do, and most businesses that do this do it because they value it as well, and they want to be good people on a good planet in a good Australia. And so my background, so I traveled around Australia with my partner in a van for 2 years, had the most amazing time, did it during COVID as well. So we were quite lucky that we didn't have all of the lockdowns, somehow got into WA before the lockdowns happened. But whilst we had a really, really amazing time, we pretty much always found ourselves constantly questioning how inclusive a destination was or how inclusive an experience was. So we would turn up somewhere and we would just wonder how welcoming the locals are, what their attitudes are like. When we turned up in a accommodation, we would wonder whether they were welcoming as a business, what their guests were like. And what that means is that you're constantly guessing how gay you can be. You know, how will I be received? How tolerant are these people? And so you'll do things like we would avoid kind of showing affection for each other often. Occasionally we would check in separately, which is a very common situation that we hear from both operators and travelers, of one person checking in while the other hangs back. And sometimes we'd let them think that we're friends or brothers. And these were all ways that we were kind of going back into the closet and hesitating in being our full selves. And then through our community on Instagram, we found that others were having similar experiences. So we were trying to campaign to Australia tourism to do better in terms of representation. But then we also realized that there was this educational piece that was missing. So for Margaret River, we ran our first tourism workshop. And I wanted this to represent the community and not just my personal experiences, because I'm one person out of one letter of a really diverse communities. And often people do just think about gay men, whereas there's a lot of diversity in the community. So we ran a survey of over 1,000 to collect their experiences. And we found that other people were having very similar experiences. So I might read out a few. One person says, I avoid saying or behavior that suggests that I'm traveling with my wife because it seems easier to have people assume that we're gal pals. Typically, only one of us checks in while the other hangs back. I avoid being seen kissing, hugging, or being in physical contact with another man because I couldn't guarantee that other guests would tolerate us, and there was no guarantee that the staff would protect us. I minimize my personal style. I'm careful to not express my joy or happiness in public spaces. I avoid wearing certain clothing. I butch up my speech. We've avoided sitting together at breakfast. We didn't show any signs of affection when I appeared female and would sometimes ask for two separate beds. And then the last one, I've avoided public displays of affection when families consisting of young children are nearby. So these are all examples of ways that people are hesitating and, well, not just hesitating, they are basically going back into the closet and not being themselves. And so this is what's motivated me to start Welcome with Pride. And that's what our vision is. It's to create an Australia where everyone experiences an equal freedom to express themselves on holiday without fear and without hesitation. So that's what we do. We help businesses create this inclusive space so that we don't have to hesitate. We know from the moment we book the holiday to the moment we turn up that it's really inclusive, it's welcoming, and they're not just tolerant, we belong there. And I want to create that really powerful feeling of belonging for all LGBTQ plus travelers in Australia.
That's really fascinating information that you've shared, and obviously, like I find it really, I don't, because I don't think of, this is not my personal experience, so I don't often think of these perspectives. So it's really powerful to hear those quotes from the people that you have surveyed. And I just really like to understand a little bit more because, we like to think that we are a society and a community that is growing in acceptance and tolerance. And then you hear this stuff and you're like, oh yeah, wow, we're not, we're not where I like to think we are, or, like it's always a bit of a reality check, isn't it? And so I'd just like to talk a little bit more about, where people do talk about they're going back into the closet when they travel. And then I guess, why this happens. You've sort of talked about that a little bit, but what it means, I guess, for the guest experience, but also too for the businesses and the tourism operators that are dealing with this, serving this clientele.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So how does it affect the guest experience essentially? So a little bit about why a lot of people that are part of the community have had a history of rejection in the past. and going to a new unfamiliar place can re-trigger some of those anxieties. So whereas at home you might be kind of fully happy and comfortable, when you go somewhere new, it can trigger those fears again. And so that's why you need kind of more proactive signs of inclusion from the tourism boards and from the operators to create an inclusive space. There's also 62 countries in the world that criminalize same-sex behavior still, and there's 11 countries where they have the death penalty. And then even in countries which are they protect LGBTQ plus rights, like the US, for example, or Brazil or Australia, attitudes really vary from region to region, from person to person. So it's not 100% of everyone is on board. So there's always people that, that they don't agree and they're not very accepting. So you never know who you're going to come across and what it's like in that area. And in our research, we found that 33% said that they saw South Australia as LGBTQ plus friendly. So only a third, compared to New South Wales, for example, which was 65%, so 2/3. So South Australia is a little bit behind the other states, such as Victoria and New South Wales, and then Adelaide is 54% friendly versus 93% for Sydney. So there's a really big opportunity to show, and it's not always that these states are unwelcoming and unfriendly, it's that people don't know how welcoming and friendly they are. So that's why we have to proactively send positive signals of inclusion, and increase awareness as to just how friendly they currently are, if that makes sense. In terms of how this impacts the guest experience, if you're constantly second guessing yourself, you're not feeling free to enjoy your holiday. You can't fully be in the moment and having a great time in those interactions with the staff, or even just walking around the accommodation, for example. You're a little bit guarded. And so it makes sense that you can't have the most amazing guest experience if you're constantly kind of a little bit on guard or second guessing yourself and not kind of expressing your feelings for your partner or expressing your gender, for example. So that impacts the guest experience. And obviously, when you have a lower guest experience, that impacts your ability to drive repeat business with those guests or to get them to be advocating for your brand. On the flip side of that, I would say it's really, really easy to create really amazing inclusive experiences. And when we experience a really inclusive experience where we feel that feeling of belonging, that creates really that turns us into real loyal advocates for your brand. So a lot of LGBTQ plus travelers will come back to the same experience again and again, and they'll tell all of their friends. So you start to build this kind of community, loyalty and reputation for your business. So there's a really, really big opportunity here to turn really positive, inclusive guest experiences into repeat business, essentially.
And that's, that loyalty and that advocacy, and we all do it, don't we? When we have a really great experience somewhere, we, talk about it and we share about it. And if we have a really great experience when we potentially, that's more of the exception as opposed to the norm when you're traveling and you're feeling that you can, we went here and just fully welcoming, totally comfortable in being ourselves. That's how we as a state can really start to turn that perception, because you're right, it's, if only 33% think that we're friendly, there's an opportunity there, and certainly too, because it's not that we're not friendly, it's just that maybe we're not talking about it or people aren't talking about it enough. So so really great and exciting, I guess, in terms of what, our journey with you, Charlie, and businesses that choose to come on that with us and what this could mean. So just from your perspective, what are some of the key elements that we can, start thinking about that make a travel experience welcoming and inclusive for the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, perfect. So I think just briefly on what you said, I think there's a certain amount of work into showing how friendly South Australia already is, and that's a bit of the work, but I would say that there's a lot more work that needs to be done, in the sense that a lot of people feel that they're inclusive individuals, as in they value inclusivity, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your business appears inclusive and welcoming. So there's a very big difference between valuing it as an individual and it appearing as a business. And that's because you have to proactively put in the work to make it appear inclusive and welcoming, so that someone finds your website online and they're like, wow, they're really inclusive, or they turn up at your experience and then again, they're like, oh, wow, they're really inclusive and welcoming. So you need to proactively do these steps. And I would say that belonging, which is what we're going for, it's not just safety, it's not just diversity and inclusion now, it's belonging. And that feeling it's an active word. It's something that you have to proactively create in people. It doesn't turn up out of nowhere. So you have to inspire that feeling of belonging in your guests. And that comes for all kind of diversities as well, whether we're talking about accessibility or LGBTQ plus, for example. And then coming back to your question on how, I'll briefly start with what not to do because that can be an easy myth to debust. So the rainbow flag alone isn't enough. 80% said that the rainbow flag alone appears tokenistic and like it's pinkwashing. And that's because we've had, unfortunately, a lot of corporates kind of do pinkwashing during Pride Month or one day per year. So in the UK, for example, we have LGBT sandwiches from M&S. So we have these kind of tokenistic gestures that don't really inspire anything within us. They're just very empty, and they leave people wondering if they just want their money as opposed to actually making practical commitments. So the rainbow flag is part of the story, and it really does send a positive signal. But if you only do that, it's not quite enough. So in our research, we have 7 inclusive actions and 7 inclusive to create an inclusive experience as prioritized by the community, and then 7 inclusive authentic marketing actions you can do, again, prioritized by the community. The first and the most important thing you can do for the inclusive experience is training. So 88% said that staff training is what creates an inclusive experience. And that's not that surprising given the guest experience often does come down to that interaction with the owner or with staff. And when that's a really warm, welcoming interaction, that is what translates into people having a really, really great experience and then advocating for your brand. And so the reason that training is so important is you might currently be making accidental mistakes without realizing it. I would say that when I created the training, I was learning every step of the way because, as I said, being a gay man is just one part of the community. But, you know, for a trans and gender diverse guest, for example, understanding the things that you might be saying that might be causing offense is the first step. So the training brings you to a stage where you know everything that you need to know, and therefore it gives you that confidence to really focus on having really engaging, warm interactions with your guests, knowing that you're not going to accidentally make a mistake, knowing that if you do make a mistake, you know how to handle it because making mistakes are completely normal, but having the confidence to be able to correct those mistakes in a really fluid, natural, respectful way, which can actually also build the experience when someone witnesses you doing that. I would say having the confidence to also use really inclusive language that you know is really affirming, that creates a memorable experience. It's what makes people feel really connected to you and to your staff, and that is what drives a really outstanding guest experience.
Sorry, just unmute myself there. So those that guest experience that you were just talking about, and I guess from your perspective, again, what are some of the key elements? Oh no, hang on, we've talked about that. Sorry. I was just saying to everyone, I was just saying to Charlie yesterday, you know, like coming off of a long weekend, it's always my brain is usually go slow on a Monday, but put me on a Tuesday after a long weekend, and it's really the cogs really do need some oiling. We've talked about that. It's a personal perspective question, I guess. Can you share a positive experience where you felt particularly welcomed? You know, you talked about how that training can translate, and obviously, you know, you've had experience. You know, you're now doing the training from your own experiences, just in terms of delivering training. But yeah, can you just talk about a positive experience where you felt particularly welcomed, and what role did that tourism operator play in this?
Yeah, okay, that's a really good question. I will just continue just briefly on the last point. as I mentioned, the workshop that we're doing, the webinar, we dig into all 14 actions that you can do to create an inclusive experience. So me saying staff training, if you're left wanting more, then that's why, is because you'll find out more in the webinar and the workshop. But training is the first and the most important thing that you can do. In terms of experiences, I have a really good example from South Australia too, actually. So Yaley from Ecopia on Kangaroo Island. And then I'd also say Carly from Kangaroo Islands as well at Stowaway. But with Yaley, we had the most amazing experience there, and I want to go back there as much as I possibly can. And anyone who's coming to Australia and wondering where to go, I'm like, oh, well, Kangaroo Island's great for nature. And also I know the best experience. So just talking about that loyalty, it really does come through. But the reason that it was so great, I would say primarily comes down to um, she has allowed her values as an individual to really shine through her business. And it's just so obvious. And it really creates a sense of authenticity, and it really resonates with me as an LGBTQ plus traveler. So on her website, for example, she has dedicated pages to sustainability, to accessibility as well, and to inclusion. And reading those pages, it's just very, very obvious that she strongly values inclusivity. It's a very authentic message that she's written there. And that's the advantage of not writing something that's just like really standardized, but actually putting your own spin on it and really letting your values as an individual flow through. So I would say she's done that really, really well to create an image of her business online that's really inclusive. And then she also has tried to have inclusive imagery. So that also starts the story with people finding her experience on her social medias and finding that inclusive imagery, getting that spark, going to her website, seeing it's not tokenistic and it's really authentic and it really resonates. And then in all of the interactions that I had with her, she never made any assumptions about my sexuality. And for someone who's gender diverse, it would be not having any assumptions about their gender. And it was just, I don't know, just the very inclusive, affirming language that she used really made me feel welcome and made me feel not like I was in a heteronormative environment, if that makes sense. And then also when I met her in person, and just how excited she was to have us stay. And again, just that really, really deep connection in that interaction where her values really shone through, and she again just used very inclusive, affirming language essentially. So I'd say the main thing is allowing your values as an individual to like really flow through and shine through in your business through multiple touch points is what she's done really, really well.
That's really great to hear. And you know, and we'll talk about the training because that's next bit, but it really goes to show that it can be very simple.
Oh, yes. And I will actually continue, sorry, with
Yeah,
Yale as well and with
yeah.
Carly. Both of them are doing our training program and our accreditation. So they have both Yale and Carly have done the e-learning, and they're currently doing the accreditation. And I think what that shows is even though they are probably one of the most inclusive experiences I've had in Australia, their attitude is that they don't know what they don't know. And so they want to do these programs to make sure that they aren't accidentally making mistakes, and that they are, really are providing an inclusive experience because they value that as individuals. And so that commitment and that proactivity, that is what creates a real inclusive business as well, is because they're constantly trying to improve and educate themselves and learn so that they are respectful and affirming and providing the best guest experiences. So that proactivity and that genuine commitment is also kind of what creates a really, really inclusive business.
Right. And so about your, because now let's really talk about your training, and that opportunity for businesses that we've got coming up with TiCSA. So let's dive into it. We're looking at the training side, and then you've got your accreditation as well, and, which the training will lead into. But what benefits does participating in LGBTQI plus inclusive tourism training offer? And if I'm an operator signing up to participate, what can I expect to gain from it?
Yeah. Very good question. So we have three different levels of training. We have our e-learning, which is half an hour. And the reason that it's so short is because business operators are busy, their staff are busy. So it's just 30 minutes and you can do it online from anywhere and manage it around busy schedules. And then we have our webinar, which is the 2-hour one that we're doing next month, which is online. Again, it's accessible, but it's a bit longer, but then it has this strategic element to it, where you'll learn how to create inclusive experiences and authentic marketing. And then we have the workshop, which is in person, so requires a bit more of a commitment, but you get a bit more out of it, which I'll come on to that a bit later. So the main benefits, if I just start with the e-learning, for example, the first part of the e-learning is about understanding LGBTQ plus communities in terms of what all the letters mean, including transgender, for example, learning about the diversity of genders, sexualities, and bodies. So you build a fundamental understanding. You also learn about some of our experiences traveling, common kind of microaggressions that we might experience. And then the second part of the training builds on that knowledge to learn how to create really inclusive experiences and to use inclusive language. So you'll practice engaging with guests in these really interactive scenarios where you'll choose your response that is the most inclusive, whether it's a kind of non-binary guest, a trans guest, a gay guest, for example. And so you get a lot of confidence using inclusive language and creating that really inclusive, memorable experience and interaction. You'll also learn kind of common mistakes, how to avoid them, but also if you do make a mistake, how to handle it and quickly correct it. So that's the e-learning. It really builds the foundation of creating those inclusive interactions and experiences. And we recommend owners take that e-learning and that they get all of their customer-facing staff to do that as well. And you also start to create a really inclusive business as well for your team members as well. And an inclusive business and environment for your employees makes a really inclusive environment for your guests as well. So that's the e-learning, with the main benefits being you'll know that you know everything you need to know. You'll have the confidence to know how to create a really inclusive interaction, use inclusive language. You'll therefore be able to focus on fostering really deep connections with your guests, which is what creates that amazing guest experience. And you'll learn how to handle mistakes. We'll then have the rest of the training. So with the webinar, for example, we have an extra kind of hour where we'll dig into each step that you can do to create an inclusive experience, each of those 7 steps. So we go through each of them in order and then give you some practical examples of what that looks like from other operators. And then we'll do the same for authentic marketing so that we can go through each of those 7 actions again and how to do those. So that's the webinar, and that's all online. So it's a bit less interactive, but you can just do it from home and you can do it anywhere. So it's really accessible. The workshop is in person, and so it's really engaging and interactive. So you'll do exercises with your colleague, with the person next to you. You'll have discussions as a room. You'll practice using inclusive language with the person next to you. You'll self-assess your property against all of the criteria. And then most importantly, you'll create an action plan. So for the last half an hour of the workshop, we create a plan where you have exactly what you're going to do for the next couple of weeks, for the next few months, and the next year, so that you have a very tangible plan coming out of the workshop. Because we know that you're very busy, and after doing these educational sessions, you go back to business as usual. So it's really helpful to have that plan in place.
Cool.
And I think, did you want to continue, or should I talk about the accreditation as well? Or should we talk about that in a bit?
No, let's talk about the accreditation. But then I guess actually my first question before we do that, just a question, because obviously we've got the webinar coming up and then the face-to-face workshop, and you've got that e-learning as well. Do people have to do 1, 2, 3, or can they do just 2, or can they come to 3? Like, what's, obviously ideally people be 1, 2, 3, but if they don't have, they're available in do they have to do all 3 to be able to get something out of this is I guess what I'm saying, or can they just yes, I'll do the webinar in November, or actually no, I just want to do the e-learning and then come along to the workshop in February?
Yeah, good question. I haven't thought about whether people would think that before. So the e-learning, you can do any one. You don't have to do all 3. You can just do
Yep.
one. The workshop and the webinar are very similar, so you don't have to do both of those. but you could easily do so those two don't really overlap, if that makes sense.
Yep.
As in you don't need to do both of them. The e-learning is the same as the beginning of the webinar and the beginning of the workshop. It's just a bit more interactive because it's
Yep.
you kind of doing practical examples and scenarios online. And so it's a one-on-one and it's very immersive and interactive e-learning. So you could easily do the e-learning and then do the webinar, or do the e-learning and then do the workshop, or you can just go to either the webinar or the workshop. So any of those work. The really useful thing about the e-learning is it's just half an hour and you can just pretty much immediately build your knowledge and get kind of 50%, 80% of the way there with the e-learning, if that makes sense. And it's also really fun. I've probably done it about 100 times and it's just a really engaging e-learning. It's very fun to do.
Yep. And also too, I think, like such a great opportunity. Obviously, we want people to come to the webinar and the workshop as well. But I think, like I've done, when you're talking about inclusion training, and, I've just done this recently. We did some training with a company called Purple Orange, which is around disability inclusion. And because we're running the same sort of webinar and workshop, I did it multiple times. But each time I was like, oh my God, like, wow, yeah, your ability to take on new points and to learn something, even though there might be a bit of a layering, I think that layering is really beneficial because, the first time you hear it, there's so much to take in. The second time you hear it, you're like, oh, actually, I know a lot of this sort of stuff. My brain's now got capacity to really hone in onto this. But also too, I think the webinar and the workshop is a great opportunity to engage with you too, Charlie, for anyone who's sort of thinking about how they might do that, work out their time. But also too, if you come to the webinar, you're a manager or a business owner, then you can get your staff to do that e-learning if they can't, and then you can have those really rich conversations around this. So, then we talk about the accreditation and then how that fits into this?
Yeah, perfect. So the reason that we built the accreditation is because, again, we know operators are really time poor and busy. So you can attend the kind of meetings like this or the webinar or the workshop, but sometimes actually turning that into action can be a bit difficult because you're just constantly juggling so many different aspects and owning and running a small business. So the reason that we have the accreditation primarily is to give you a step-by-step guide of exactly what you need to do. So we have a self-assessment checklist in the accreditation where you'll go through a list and you'll say, yes, I've done this. No, I haven't done this. If you haven't done it, then there's a template and templates and tools for you to easily meet that criteria. So it's more of a business development. Well, it's not more, it's largely business development. So it allows you to really quickly and easily reach best practice for inclusive tourism. With those criteria being prioritized by LGBTQ plus travelers as well. So you're doing the most important things that will resonate with travelers. And then the other benefits alongside that is the access to me as you're going through that process. You'll be able to email me and ask questions as you go, even kind of email some of the things that you've done and say, oh, is this okay? Or should we change it? So you get that kind of support as well, which operators have found just really useful. It just saves them a lot of time as well, just being able to have someone to help them specifically for LGBTQ plus tourism. And then the other reason we created the accreditation is for the recognition. So it's all well kind of doing all of this work, but you do want to get business outcomes from it as well as it being the right thing to do. So the accreditation allows you to stand out in a really competitive market. So through our kind of getting verified by a third party for your inclusion, that really resonates with LGBTQ plus travelers. 96% say that they would prefer an accredited experience over one that isn't, and 45% say they'd be willing to pay more for an accredited experience. So it allows you to differentiate in a really competitive market with our logo assets on your websites, in your emails, in the actual experience as well. And then also for the operators that get accredited sooner, they'll also get exposure through my personal Instagram to 130,000 LGBTQ plus travelers. So it gives you that direct marketing avenue to those travelers for businesses that get accredited sooner rather than later, because over time that will turn into something else.
And I mean, we certainly, TiCSA, our quality tourism framework is based on the benefits that accreditation brings. So I think, and particularly when so you're speaking to the converted when you talk to us about what accreditation means and why it's really important for businesses, and that verification, we do know that consumers look for it. And I think particularly when you talk about, the rainbow flag, which is what a lot of people have generally used as, a sign that a business is inclusive, in that, I guess the mass application of that in a way that's kind of eroded, I guess, people's confidence in it. And what the accreditation does is really great. And hopefully people do, once they've completed this training, really think about how, that business development that accreditation brings, and really lean into that space. And so just talking about, your training and where people have taken it, you've talked about Acopia and Stowaway as well. And, they're now going through even though your experiences were pre sort of their involvement in your training programs. But can you talk about or share some examples of businesses that you have worked with, how they've implemented Welcome with Pride's recommendations, and what the benefits of that has been for both customers and also for the business?
Yeah, very good question. I would say one example is tree chalets. So we did our workshops and webinars with Margaret River 2 years ago now. And many of those operators have reported having increased loyalty from LGBTQ plus guests, and having them come back again and again, and start to refer their friends. So tree chalets have said that they've increased their LGBTQ plus bookings by double, which is really great to see. I think they said it's gone from 5 to about 10%. And then other businesses, I would say Hilton, for example, they've implemented our e-learning for all of their staff for 2 properties so far. And they've done the accreditation. And what they've found is that their reviews have been much, much more kind of outstanding, and they're outstanding on more of a common basis, if that makes sense, for not even just LGBTQ plus travelers, but for all of their guests. And I think that's because diversity and inclusion, loads of the principles are really translatable. So they can translate to accessibility, for example. It's about learning a mindset, really. And when you have that mindset in place, it does lead to better guest experiences by having more interactions that are more respectful of that individual's identity, whether that's being part of the community or having a disability, for example. And that respect and that really affirming interaction is what creates these really outstanding experiences. So Hilton have seen a really big increase in the number of positive reviews that they've had since the training. In terms of for guests, and I guess the other benefit that the businesses have seen, so another business, Carradale Cottages in Western Australia, that has done the e-learning. She said that she's just really confident engaging with guests now, and she knows that and mainly because she knows if she makes a mistake, she knows how to handle it. So she has just much more awareness of how to use inclusive language, and if she makes a mistake, what to do about it. So she's really confident engaging with guests, and she has a lot of guests that will check in one at a time, and then one of them will hang back. So she's mentioned that's happened a lot. And so she's been able to build an environment where that guest gets drawn in, and then they feel really welcomed and included. The other example that came to mind, what was I going to talk about? Oh, in terms of the guest experience, we've not had the accreditation is quite new. And so we're currently in the process of collecting information from guests that have turned up at accredited properties. However, we have research where we built the accreditation where they said how they feel about it. And that's when 96% said they would prefer an accredited experience. And I'll just give some quotes, which just gives some color to this. So this person said, this accreditation will make me feel so safe. I want to give my money to people and businesses that support my safety, well-being, and dignity. And so this is another point that I haven't actually covered, which is that we not only want to feel welcomed and included, but we prefer to give our money to inclusive businesses. You feel good about your decision when you're giving your money to an ally business or even LGBTQ plus owned business. So if anyone is on this call and is part of the community, if you feel comfortable, it actually does really great things for your marketing and for the guest experience when guests know that they're turning up at LGBTQ plus owned businesses, because we love to support other members of the community. The accreditation will help me feel more safe and able to support LGBTQ plus and ally businesses. The accreditation will take away my anxiety of being discovered and allow me to enjoy my stay with you. Until you've had to think about every sentence that you say, worrying about being discovered, you cannot truly understand how stressful, seemingly ordinary situations can be. I can assess and change my behavior, but my child can't be expected to do the same. So I would book an accredited accommodation so that I feel confident that I have the security for my child. So these are all of the kinds of ways that people show that the accreditation will make them feel safe, make them feel welcomed, like they belong, and give them the choice to choose where they put their money.
That's very powerful stuff. And I also too like that bit when you're talking about businesses feeling confident, having that confidence, because we all do it. You say stuff and you're like, oh shit, I've said the wrong. Oh my God, like
Yeah.
I'm classic for it, blurt something out, and then like, oh God, and then you're trying to, you're making more of a mess instead of trying to retract and deal, with what you've unintentionally done in many cases. So that confidence around, okay, that's happened. How do we deal with it? I think is really, really great.
Yeah.
I'm just conscious we're coming sort of, towards the end of our time. Just want to leave a little couple of moments for if anyone's got questions, but we do have another couple more things to sort of touch on. And I guess one of those is, how do you envision the future of LGBTQ plus inclusivity in tourism, and what role do you see Welcome with Pride, playing in shaping the future? Because you are, a relatively new organisation in this space, and what does the future look like?
Yeah. So as I said, 60% currently default to going back in the closet. Our vision is for an Australia where this is 0%. So everyone has an equal opportunity to express themselves without hesitation and without fear. That's what we want. So everyone deserves a holiday. So everyone having this equal freedom to express themselves. That's what we want for Australia and beyond. So we will be working in other countries as well. The role that Welcome with Pride will play is, first of all, through our training. Training is the most essential, important step. So our training will help increase operators and the staff's awareness of communities and create those really inclusive experiences and interactions. And also of the community as a whole, because as I mentioned before, it's not just about the operator, it's about the destination. So we see our education really driving that shift in awareness and creating those inclusive experiences. And then we see our accreditation initially being the way that travelers can choose those inclusive experiences that will make them feel safe and like they belong. So we'll reduce that 60% by travelers being able to choose the most inclusive experiences ultimately. And our work will be done when that number's at 0% and the accreditation isn't needed anymore, which we have no idea how long that will be. But things always progress faster than you think they will, and also slower at the same time. So I think that's probably the role that we'll play. And I think at this stage we are quite new, but I would say we're at the stage of businesses that really want to differentiate in this market and stand out, being the kind of early adopters and the ones to make that first step. Like, yeah.
And I think, when I think about how society has changed, and, even 5 years ago, the discussion that we have around transgender was totally different to where we're at now. And, as society becomes more inclusive, we have more reason for things to be inclusive about. So perhaps the inclusive journey will be a really ongoing one for us all in businesses. So I just want to sort of come sort of in closing with you, Charlie, before we sort of throw it open to the floor or to the room. Your top 3 tips for everyone, and no doubt training and our webinars are going to be hopefully one of those. But your top 3 tips for everyone who's joined us today to implement in their business to enhance their inclusivity efforts and better engage with the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, absolutely. Training, number one, for you and for your team. And the easiest, quickest way to do that is the e-learning. And you can contact me directly. I'll put it in the chat in this message so that you can contact me if you want to do that before the webinar. So that is number one. And anything else that you do without that won't be as authentic and it won't resonate as much. So that's the kind of building block. Probably the second thing I would say is auditing your website and all your communications, your booking forms, your emails, and your social media to make sure that it's gender inclusive and you're not making any kind of heteronormative or stereotypical assumptions about gender there, so that you're including all genders, all sexualities in that language, to make us feel included. The third thing I would say, probably what I was talking about with Yaley. So making an authentic public commitment to where you stand. So putting something on your website, whether it's an inclusion statement. I noticed you did that at the beginning of today. So an inclusion statement under your email or at the bottom of your website, or on a page on your website, that goes a really long way. And you can do that online, or you can even do that in your experience as well. And as part of our accreditation, we have the kind of standard, beautiful posters which have those welcome statements, but you can also do your own.
Great. Thank you, Charlie. Does anyone have any questions? I think it's been such a really rich and insightful conversation today, and a real, am I okay? I'm just watching myself freezing a little bit, and I hope that I'm
That's
not.
all right.
Okay, that's good. We, great Wi-Fi in this building. But yes, this is a real great sort of insight into what I think the webinar and that workshop will offer to everyone. But does anyone have any questions? Well, we've got Charlie with us this morning from today, or yep. So Jason from Adelaide, Zoos SA, great discussion, Charlie. Looking forward to the workshop. What is the difference between what you are offering and the Rainbow Tick accreditation?
It's a good question. So for people that don't know, the Rainbow Tick accreditation is a very rigorous accreditation for LGBTQ plus inclusive services. The difference is that accreditation is very much focused on, it's really focused on the healthcare industry. So with healthcare workers, really, it's not tourism specific. So our accreditation is tourism specific. So all of our training is focused on those interactions with guests and how to make an inclusive tourism business, which is much more useful for you. The other difference is that their accreditation is so rigorous because it is about kind of healthcare service and those kind of services, that it would be incredibly time consuming and expensive for tourism businesses to do. So our accreditation is far more affordable, but also it's only as complex as it needs to be. We've made it so that it doesn't take up huge amounts of your time and that it's efficient for you whilst meeting the needs of the community. So the Rainbow Tick accreditation would be more expensive and take much longer and be probably overkill for a small business.
Thank you for that. And I think that, the tourism specific nature of what you're doing is really, really the benefit of particularly for us working with you, because tourism businesses are, we are, no matter our size, we're really unique operations compared to other businesses because of the way that we engage and interact with our customers. Carolyn's asked, is there a Welcome with Pride website?
Very good question, Carolyn. It is currently being built. So we have really big visions for our website. We imagine it being kind of like Airbnb, but for LGBTQ plus community and the queer community, where you can have, you can filter by stays, experiences, LGBTQ plus owned businesses, events, etc. In a really interactive kind of Airbnb format. So we're investing a lot into making that. And so that will be built over the coming months. In the meantime, our focus is on building business capability through our training and the accreditation, and then the exposure that we're currently offering to you for LGBTQ plus travelers is primarily through my personal Instagram account of 130,000 followers. But over time, we'll build this really great asset, which allows people to find your experience wherever it is, and then also find nearby inclusive experiences when they turn up at yours as well.
And I think that's a really great sort of, advertising, I guess, or incentive, I should say, for people to do that, do the word training and then do the accreditation with you, is that you will then obviously you get that promotion from you, Charlie, and from Welcome with Pride around those businesses that have gone through accreditation. So it's a really great, really great value add for those businesses that do go through the training and accreditation. So we've got 2 minutes left. Charlie's just shared his email address. No, his email address, I should say, in our gosh. That long weekend has killed me. The email address in the chat. We'll also email it out to everyone. We'll also email out Charlie's Instagram handle as well for you to start following. And I think you'll probably be surprised. I was certainly surprised when I started following Charlie. I was like, oh my God, all these people that I know also follow Charlie, which goes to show the breadth or the diversity of or the reach, I guess, of your market, Charlie, but also to the regard that the LGBTQ plus community has for you and for your travel advice. So with 1 minute left, we'll wrap it up. Obviously, there is another chance to have some more of Charlie, or there's 2 more chances. There's our webinar on the 5th of November, which is a 2-hour webinar. And then there's our in-person training in Adelaide on the 5th of February. And I do encourage everyone. I think today's discussion's been so great. I think there's a real appetite in our industry. Let's start increasing that 33% for South Australia to 80 plus if we can. Set ourselves a target. But yeah, please contact us. We'll send some more information out. Thank you, Charlie, for taking some time out today to talk to us. This has been fantastic. And I look forward to seeing you in November.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. I'm just going to quickly put on that link I've just put in the chat as to a type form. So we don't have a website yet, but that gives you an overview of everything that we do. So it takes 5 minutes to do it, and then it will also provide your details to me. So quick overview of what we do, and then it starts the conversation. But yes, very excited for next month. It'll be really exciting to talk through the practical changes that you can implement in your business, and also very happy and proud of South Australia and TiCSA to be the first industry council to be doing this training. So we've done this training for a large number of businesses and tourism boards, but you're the first industry council. So very much leading in that way.
Yeah, excellent. We're excited. Really looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Charlie. Really appreciate it. Everyone have really great Tuesdays. What beautiful weather we've got at the moment.
Ours is not good in Sydney, but
it's lovely here.
but I'm very glad for you. Okay, perfect. Thanks everyone. Thank you.